What's up, y'all? My name is Holly. Welcome back to Trauma Hour. Well, here we are. Episode 2 of Bad Dates in Abusive Relationships. Again, with the trigger warning, if you are not in a place where you can hear discussions of bad relationships and domestic violence and abuse, please skip this episode because that's all that it entails. Which I could probably say for my life, my whole life. And yeah, where do we begin? Let's see. So I left off the last episode talking about that marriage I had that was abusive and kind of how it ended. And that was a very emotional and vulnerable episode for me, obviously. And I don't regret it still. I want to be clear about that. There's something about having these conversations in this way that is contributing to my healing. And there's a few reasons for that I can identify, and there's probably more reasons that I haven't realized yet. But for me, telling my story alone in the safety of my home without interruption has been very, very cathartic and healing. And then on the other side of it, I have people listening that reach out to me in return and share your stories and offer your comfort to me. And that is also contributing to my healing. So I want to say thank you to those of you who are listening and who have reached out to me and shared your stories with me and offered virtual hugs. It definitely means a lot and it contributes to my healing journey. So thank you for that. I have a lump in my throat, but we're going to try not to cry right away. Panicked but vibing, baby. Here we go. I'm starting to get emotional. I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. So let's do like a little therapeutic practice. If I'm in tune with my body, it's telling me that I'm a little bit anxious and uncomfortable right now. I'm like fidgety, my heart's racing a little bit. And it's because I'm talking about something that's really uncomfortable, which is domestic violence and abuse. However, I think that what has contributed to my struggles with abusive relationships has been the lack of conversation about them and the high levels of stigma attached to them. So for me, part of breaking the trauma cycles and part of breaking the stigma requires me to talk about it vulnerably, honestly, and respectfully. So that's what I'm doing. Um, Note to self. I'm just reminding myself, why the fuck am I here again? Why am I talking about this with a bunch of people that I don't even know who's listening? Yeah, so I guess we could go back to where we left off, where I was highly triggered and emotional in the last episode towards the end there. And luckily, I had therapy the next day and I was able to kind of unpack some stuff in therapy. And, you know, just your basic tracing it back to the roots. There were definitely repressed memories that came up for me of things that had happened in that marriage. You know, the threats to my life were not verbal and not obvious, but they were there, such as, oh God, it makes me so fucking uncomfortable. I felt my life was in danger a few times with that man. And it was in physical altercations and it was in episodes, arguments, rage episodes that would happen in the car when he was at the wheel. And he became a very reckless driver in those moments if there was an argument in the car. So I now have like trauma that presents as always wanting to be the driver. And I get extremely nervous when people drive recklessly with me in the car, because he would scream and yell and drive 100 miles an hour, swerving in and out of traffic. And I would just be like, my number one fear is dying in a car accident. I'm terrified of car accidents more than I am of sharks, more than I'm scared of things most people are scared of. I'm absolutely petrified of car accidents, of being in one, of being involved in one, of witnessing a terrible accident. It's my worst nightmare. And this man knew that and still would leverage that power dynamic to make me feel extremely terrified and dependent on him in the car. And it didn't happen every time, just a couple of times, but that's enough. That's enough to make you not forget. So, God, it makes me physically like, okay, just this is the other thing with trauma that I think is difficult. It's difficult to go to these places and talk about these things because the discomfort is overwhelming. But again, I'm on a journey of healing, and it requires me to put myself in uncomfortable positions of growth and change. So I'm doing that on a public platform as an example of what not to be. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I felt utterly unsafe and uncared for in that relationship. I think that might go without saying. So now I'm in a position where I'm asking myself, okay, how did I get to that relationship and how did I stay in that relationship? It's not my fault. I was spotted and picked off by a predator. However, there was something in me that didn't push him away from day one. So I have to live in the paradox of this is not my fault, but what pieces can I take responsibility for so that this doesn't happen again? And that's where I'm at right now. And I traced some of this in therapy to a very deep core feeling. I'm going to just I'm going to save the long version of hours and hours and hours of therapy and lots of money. And I'm just going to tell you guys where I kind of landed, where I'm at right now. So I can trace this back to a root feeling of, yeah, you're great, but you're not worth taking care of. I'm not going to go out of my way to protect Holly. That would be crazy. I'm not going to go out of my way or change my behavior in any fashion to make Holly feel safe and comfortable and loved. There are lots of things in my early life that I can remember contributing to this message that has deeply embedded itself in my subconscious and in my understanding of what I'm worth. So, here we go with the discomfort. I want to be clear that I'm sharing my perception and my experience. I am not saying that this was the intention of anyone, but I internalized repeated messages in my childhood that were not expressly direct, but I got the memo, if you know what I'm saying, that I didn't matter that much. Protecting me didn't really matter. Educating me didn't really matter. Going out of your way to get to know me, I just never experienced it that I can remember. When I think back on little Holly, I have a few memories that I can use as an example. I remember my mom used to buy Suave shampoo and conditioner from Walmart, and it was 99 cents a bottle. And when you have a family of 10 on one income living in Southern California, there's not a lot of money left. So I really didn't like this Suave shampoo and conditioner. I felt like it was drying out my hair, and I'm 11 years old. I'm like coming into the age where I care about my hair. And I remember asking my mom, I saw a commercial for this shampoo called Pantene ProV, and it looks like it will be moisturizing and make my hair like silky and thick and long. I was buying into the advertising, but that's like a whole other issue. And I remember asking, can I have Pantene ProV instead of Suave? And if everyone else wants to use the Suave, like, that's okay. I just would like something else for myself. And my mom said, no, we can't afford it. We have to share the Suave. Now, little me internalized that message as, you don't matter very much. You matter less than the $2.50 difference between Suave and Pantene. And I can see it now that I'm an adult who has worked on self-awareness, but at the time, of course, I didn't know that. I just was like, okay, understood. And I never asked for it ever again. And I didn't get Pantene ProV until I got a job and paid for it myself, because message received, too much money, you're not worth it. And of course, that's not what was being said to me, but that is the message that I got from it. And I remember asking for tampons instead of pads because I wasn't physically comfortable wearing a maxi pad all day long when I first got my menstrual period. And I said, can I please have, it's already so fucking awkward. I'm bleeding and I would really like to, it's like, how do you talk to your fucking parents about that? For me, it was so awkward already. So I said, I'm not comfortable wearing pads. I would really like to try tampons. And I got the same thing. No, we can't afford it. We're all going to use pads and just share the bag. And the message that I took from that was, you're not worth it. You're not worth a $4 box of tampons. And that kind of stuff was recurring. Now, because we were on limited resources, I couldn't see that as a child. I don't have any understanding of money. I don't understand a budget. I don't understand what a traditional household is supposed to look like. I have no idea. To me, all I'm seeing is I am identifying something that I want or need. I am asking for it and I'm being told, no, you don't deserve that. You're not worth it. That was constant for me. Now, that was my experience. It's not necessarily the intention of my parents, but that is how I walked away from my childhood. We're not putting you in school. I internalized that as, I'm not worth educating. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. I internalized it as my worthiness did not meet standards for the people who are allowed to do these things. So I think that's really dangerous territory. I'm not going to talk about parenting. I have a lot of opinions about that you've probably heard some of them already, but I don't think this is a great way to parent. I do not think that my parents understood me. I don't think they took the time to, because they didn't have the time. And I was an extremely sensitive and curious little girl who needed a lot of validation and reassurance, and I needed someone to help me build up my self-esteem. If you repeat a message enough times, it becomes the embedded truth. And I think that message was repeated enough times in my early childhood that I grew up believing subconsciously, it was not a conscious realization, that I was not worth taking care of, and I was not worth actionable love. That same message was modeled to me in my parents' marriage. My father is a psychologically, emotionally, and financially abusive person. And he psychologically, emotionally, and financially abused my mother for almost 30 years. And that's the only relationship model that I knew my whole life until I became an adult and started paying attention to other relationship styles. But when you are modeled that abusers can do and say whatever they want and manipulate you and control your life, what do you expect a child in that environment to do when they grow up? You know? So no one had to tell me anything. I just saw it, you know? I saw my dad manipulating and controlling and lying and stealing and not bonding with us, and then I saw my mom accepting that for almost 3 decades. I also received those type of messages out in the world from other people, friends and random people, which I think is a little bit more expected. In my mind, your family and your home should be a sanctuary away from the rest of the world, where you are safe and understood and cared for, where you are protected from abuse. I think some of the things that I can remember being told by other people that were similar messages, like suck it in and no one's going to want to be with you if you're chubby. And I got a lot of different messages from the general public, which I think it would have been different if I could then pivot home and go to a safe sanctuary where I could process, like, wait a second, those messages aren't true. But when you're getting told those messages in the world and in the house and in the family and in the friend groups and here and there, then of course you're like, at least for me, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I, you know, it happens in the back of your head when you're not consciously aware. Something in my subconscious registered all of these messages year after year after year. You're not really worth that much. Yeah, it's nice to have you around, but not if you cost anything. So I internalized those messages and have operated that way for 33 years. Every relationship I have ever had has operated like that, with under the preface that I'm not worth very much. But I didn't really I hadn't connected the dots. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed with emotion right now. I had not connected the dots until literally recently. Like last episode. I just feel like when I listened back to that last episode and was like expressing, feeling frustration at myself for staying in that relationship. Well, I can respect that. I can respect my own frustration. I also think I was primed and prepped and wired for those type of relationships. And then I was also preyed upon by an abusive predator. And neither of those things are my fault. I didn't know any different. I don't know what it feels like to be in a loving relationship where I am respected and where my needs and my existence as an individual person matters. I don't think I have ever felt that. Every person that has ever loved me has had conditions on me. Therefore, my love that I've received in my life has never been unconditional. And the people that I have had romantic relationships with have used me as a means to an end in a lot of ways. Whether they did that consciously, like my abusive ex-husband, who was very aware of the fact that his behavior was abusive and he knew what he was doing was unhealthy. I can see in other relationships where the men were not really aware of their toxic behavior, but I was still accepting poor treatment because I was like, well, yeah, that's what I deserve. That's what everyone has always told me, is that I'm not worth very much. And it's so uncomfortable to think about it and to recognize it. But I think in order for me to find the love that I desire, that I'm seeking, I have to reconcile these things in myself and love myself and care for myself in those ways that I need before I can get to the relationship that I want. So I accept this discomfort and these tears as part of my healing. I can see now that these perpetual messages of you're not worth any type of sacrifice. So this was the part that was most confusing for me. Was in therapy we were trying to get to like, okay, is it that I don't think I'm lovable? Do I not think I'm deserving of love at all? And it's like, well, no, that's not really how I feel. I feel kind of cool and badass and lovable. I'm like cute, right? I mean, I don't know. I feel confused because I'm like, well, I feel like I'm lovable, but I'm not sure why no one else does. So am I lovable if there's no cost to it? If you don't have to make any sacrifices of any kind? If you don't have to change your behavior to compromise and make a healthy relationship? I'm saying that's what I've accepted, is trash relationships where I was like, well, I'm not gonna be worth it to him. I already know that. I just perpetuated what was modeled to me, what was embedded in me, and I have only ever accepted relationships that are similar to what I've always known. And I'm sitting here a few months from my 34th birthday, knowing that I have spent a lot of time in relationships, but I have never felt truly understood and loved for who I am. So I have sadness about that, which is why I have tears in my eyes right now. I have frustration about that. I have resentment about that. I'm still working through those feelings because it's not sustainable to feel that way forever, but I have to feel those feelings and let them run their course in the processing of my life, and then I can move forward. You got to take the trash out. I tell people this all the time. You can't just compact the garbage over and over and over, because eventually your little garbage compactor gets full. You cannot compact anger and resentment and frustration and bitterness and sadness forever. You cannot shove it down forever. You can shove it down for a little while, but eventually the trash gets full and you have to take it out. So I'm taking my trash out right now. And it sucks, but it's not as bad as the alternative, which is a lifetime of this cycling that I've been doing, this trauma cycling, this abusive relationship cycle. That is worse than taking out my emotional trash. And tapping into that marriage I was in, I think that was really the first time I told the story, and I told it honestly without stroking his ego and protecting him. I think I was groomed to protect the abuser. So I have always done that and said, oh, it's not that big of a deal. We just had a disagreement. We just wanted different things. I couldn't go there with myself. So I certainly couldn't go there and answering people's questions. What happened to your marriage? I can't tell you because it's too painful for me. That's what I should have said in the years following when people were finding out, because I couldn't talk about it. This is the first time that I've been able to talk about it, and the only reason I'm even able to is because I have come to a volcanic moment where it has to come out or I cannot move forward. So I'm kind of doing it out of necessity, like I said, for my healing. And if you are someone who's experienced abuse and you don't feel like you can talk about it or even go there, that's okay. It's not for me to be like, everyone tap into your trauma and process it. Like, there's a time and a place, and I'm finally at the time and the place. And I'm also on a mission, I'm on a mission to have the best life that I can have. And I feel like I've been fucking ripped off for a long time. And I'm just taking it into my own hands at this point. Taking responsibility for becoming the person I want to be and having the life that I feel like I've always deserved. I will admit that it is extremely difficult for me to not be resentful of people. Specifically, the two contributors to my DNA. I do have a lot of resentment that I'm still working on. And I resent all of the adults in my life who saw that things were not right, but didn't do anything about it. And I struggle with giving people the benefit of the doubt in those situations when an innocent child is involved. A child who doesn't really know or understand, who can't consent to what their life is yet, The adults are supposed to do that. They are supposed to protect and nurture and invest in and care about and care for. And I just feel like I was failed on so many levels because every time I was able to reach out for help in some way, I was kind of discouraged in one way or the other. And I guess I can see how adults who haven't dealt with their own trauma wouldn't know what to do with a young woman who's asking for help with her trauma. But isn't it your responsibility as an adult who's committed and promised to take care of children? Isn't it your responsibility to figure that out? I don't know. I just feel like I feel like an orphan in a lot of ways. I feel very lonely, which probably surprises people. I don't know, because I have a really large family, but I think I could make the argument that I have a large family because my parents suffered from this same exact feeling of loneliness. and a desire to be loved unconditionally. And instead of pursuing that internally, maybe my parents had 8 kids so that we would love them unconditionally and make them feel like they're not alone, which reinforces the message that I am a means to an end and I'm not an individual person who's worth that much. I'm saying really difficult things. I know that. I know these are potentially inflammatory things that I'm saying. I just want to acknowledge that. But I need to explore these concepts for myself. I had other dating stories to share. I'm feeling a little bit like misty-eyed. I definitely have I have emotions, but I'm okay with it. I accept these emotions and I roll with them. There were some other dating stories I was going to talk about in the aftermath of that marriage. Pretty much all of them are sour experiences on some level. Some I would consider highly traumatizing. I don't know if there's value in doing a chronological retelling of all these little spurts of like dating that I've done. And then I had another long-term relationship that lasted 3.5 years. But even that relationship was really volatile. He was not a sociopath or like a psychopathic abuser like the prior one, but there were highly dysfunctional dynamics and there were anger issues on his part that he didn't think needed to be addressed. So the message I got in that relationship was that I was not worth the effort to be respectful and kind and understanding. And now, like, it feels shitty, to process these feelings, but it's helping me, Is it? It was just a different type of, like, putting myself in positions where I could be re-abandoned and re-traumatized because my subconscious didn't know any different. That was my whole life's experience. The other thing I've been thinking about too is the piece where a small child who doesn't have the knowledge or the insight or the vocabulary to identify what's happening, but it's like I needed attention and love and validation and an investment in my development, and I wasn't getting it. I learned that performance and productivity would fill those needs on some level. So I was an ideal candidate to perform on stage and sing music and to be really organized and be a caretaker. And a lot of the skills that I have were survival tools to get my needs met. And I'm really good at them now because I have had so much practice at performance. A lot of my existence has been performative, which now that I think about it, this podcast, how much I'm sharing could potentially be pushing people away that are like, whoa, I didn't know that about you. That's a good thing to me because you probably knew the dysfunctional, dysregulated, insecure me who was performing and confused about her purpose. Now, I don't feel that way so much anymore. I definitely have behaviors that are not going anywhere. I will always be a musician and a singer-songwriter and a performer. I don't care if it's performative, literally. I enjoy it. I'm also very organized and scheduled, because that was a response to the chaos and disorganization that I felt in my early years. I became a very organized person. And that has served me really well in my career and in my home, like on a personal level here. So I'm just rambling. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I feel like when I'm processing stuff like this, it's so emotionally and psychologically draining. I feel low energy. I feel exhausted. I've been sleeping like 10, 11 hours a night because I'm doing a lot of work in my brain. It's just going through the card deck of repressed emotions and memories, and it's processing them. And that in turn, even if I'm not actively doing anything, I feel like I ran a goddamn marathon and I'm so tired. So as I sit here recording this episode, that's how I feel. I guess I could talk about like, what am I going to do with all this knowledge? It's a double-edged sword for sure. I was driving earlier today and I was like, God, I really wish I didn't know all this shit. Because then I could live in ignorance and bliss, like all the people who have hurt me. And then I think, oh, well, that's how this perpetuates. Everybody that has hurt me and wounded me and abused me and neglected me are people who have not done this work. They have refused or just been flat out unable to go there. And that is how I became traumatized and abused and neglected, is because there's a cycle of perpetual continued abuse and neglect and dysfunction. It doesn't just stop magically. It's a runaway train. Somebody has got to hit the brakes, and I'm hitting the brakes, and I'm hitting them really hard. Not only am I like dealing with my own trauma head on, as face forward as I possibly can handle, but I'm also choosing not to procreate and add to the dysfunctional bloodline or the dysfunction of mothering from a wounded place. I don't know if I have enough knowledge to speak on that further, but I feel like having a child to fill the void in myself would do nothing but repeat this cycle of making that child a means to my own end, to my happiness, to my fulfillment, to my purpose, but with very little thought about that child's happiness and the child's purpose and the investment that is required to raise and care for another human life. It's a big deal. And I wish that people thought it was a bigger deal when I was born. I wish that I was treated with more concern and respect and just general investment in my development. I would have loved an education. I would have loved to hear about all the religions in the world, not just one. I would have loved to been able to explore myself and some of my interests more. I wish a lot of things were different, but I'm not going to ruminate on it. I'm just going to acknowledge it, honor it, and do my best with what I've got. That's pretty much all we can fucking do anyways. Now I have to deal with that core emotion, that core message of I'm not really worth that much of an investment. And I think I can see that in the way I've treated myself my whole life, by the way. I don't want to just say everyone else has treated me this way. They have also taught me to treat myself that way. So I can see my whole life how I have been completely dissociated from my body and aloof to what real self-care even is. And I've never, ever felt connected to actually nurturing myself and saying, you are worthy of being taken care of. I've never done that for myself. And now I get started. I think I have to fight the jealousy of people who have been born into an environment and a life where these things were not an issue for them. I know people personally who have supportive, loving, healthy parents who have instilled in their children healthy levels of self-worth and understanding of the world and emotional regulation, and just like had a different upbringing. Here's the resentment. I remember feeling jealous of other girls that I knew when I was younger. Girls who could depend on their parents, who could trust them, who felt safe with them, who were secure. They didn't seem to have the anxiety and the instability that I felt I had all the time. I was in fight or flight mode my entire life. My adrenaline and my stress was always really high, and so was my insecurity. There are things about me, even still to this day, that I'm like, that is a shield to protect your insecurity. And I look forward to continuing this work and breaking down these walls and working through this muddy fucking garbage heap of trauma. Because you can heal. That's the thing. I believe that I can heal. I 100% believe it. I don't believe that anybody can heal me other than myself. Other people can contribute to my healing, but I pursue healing for myself through action and through changed behavior. Nothing else. Prayer's not going to change me. Other people asking me to change is not going to change me. Reading books is not going to change me. I've definitely tried. I've tried to read every book and listen to every podcast and watch every documentary and follow every psychologist and do everything they say. And the only thing that can really heal me is for me to be with myself, invest in myself, process these things, and change my behavior. That's it. Easier said than done. I'm scared. It's easy, right? It's not going to be that hard. Somebody tell me I'm doing the right thing. And I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of myself that I'm doing the harder work. I'm not taking the easy way out. I'm investing in myself in the ways that I wished I had before, that other people had invested in me. I get to do what I need to do now. And that means taking care of myself psychologically by going to therapy and working these things out. And an emotional investment, and I invest in myself financially and physically, and it's only going to get better. I have a lot of goals for myself that I cannot achieve. I've been trying for years. I want to do these things. I want to have this physique. I want to be in this type of shape. I want to have this type of lifestyle. I want to live in this kind of house. And I feel like I'm standing in front of a really huge brick wall or a canyon wall. I'm in the canyon right now. I know that what I want is achievable. I just got to get through the canyon. I got to climb that wall first. So, and then there will be other walls. That's fine. I'll fall back in the canyon a couple times, I'm sure. Yeah, I think it's important to validate yourself if you're doing the hard work. And any level of work is worth being proud of, honestly. I am proud of myself for what I have been doing the last couple years. Untangling these threads and unpacking these emotions and memories. And I can say that it is uncomfortable and I cry a lot, but I was already uncomfortable and crying a lot before anyways, because things were not going well. So it's like, all right, at least it's on my terms and for a good reason this time. So yeah, it's not as bad as the alternative. I can promise you that. I can promise you that. If you're scared to unpack some trauma, I totally get it. Trust yourself, respect yourself. The time will present itself to you. I've been in therapy for 3 years, and this is the first time I have really been able to dive into these things. I've definitely been chipping away, but I'm now hitting a deeper level, and it's just going to continue to go, and it's worth it. It's worth it. It's a way of showing love and care to yourself, is to process your trauma, and heal from it. And for me, that means professional psychological help. and good books and good podcasts. I listen to a lot of Esther Perel. I listen to Brene Brown. I just started reading Dr. Nicole LaPera, who wrote How to Do the Work. And she just released this book, actually. It's about unpacking your traumas and how to regulate yourself and the mind, body, soul connection and being aligned and being present and living your life on intentional terms, not just being a reactor, not just being a victim. So that book I just started, which I'm really excited to finish it already. But yeah, there's tools. There are tools. If you can't go to therapy, if you can't afford it, I encourage you to shop around a little bit. I know therapists are like fucking booked through 2022 right now. But if you can't get a therapist, there are other resources. There are YouTube channels. There are meditations. There's free literature. There's free workbooks. I will help you find resources if you need. But if you are living in trauma cycles and you're exhausted and you're tired of it, like that's the point I got to, then maybe that's the door opening for you to start working on it. And there's resources available for you to do that. So I hope that you will dive in and join me on this fucking godforsaken journey. It's like, if I have to be on this earth with these humans, then at least let me be a healthy one that leaves a positive legacy. When I'm gone, I want people to remember me as the version of myself that I want to be, which is kind and funny and a safe place to be. I want other people to feel safe being with me, because I think that's a lost art. I want your secrets to be safe with me. your emotions to be safe with me. I want people to feel like when they remember Holly, it brings them comfort and joy and laughter, that I was someone who made you laugh and gave you a place to cry. So, anyways, yeah, I think I can summarize the conclusion of this. Since I changed my mind about going into specific examples, I think you get the idea of the type of relationships I've been in and the type of dates I've had. It's been pretty consistent, rotating door of serious emotional and behavioral issues in the man. So I can acknowledge that I'm the common denominator here, and there's something about me that is fostering an environment where these men are comfortable entering my orbit and staying. So I need to clean my environment so that people like that are not comfortable entering my orbit and staying. I want healthy people who are emotionally mature and regulated to feel comfortable around me. And perhaps I haven't quite reached that point yet. So, no more dating and no more ruminating on all my bad dates, because that only perpetuates my resentment. I'm just going to focus on working out these issues, these abuses, these resentments, and the anger that I have. And I'm going to work on investing in myself and taking care of myself the way that I always felt I deserved and that I never have, really. By letting other people abuse me, I have abused myself. No more abusers are welcome. And that includes me, because I think I've definitely bullied myself. I have emotionally abused myself. I have treated my body in unkind ways. And I think it's time for those days to be over, you know? So, yeah, I'm just going to take a break from romantic relationships for a little bit longer. I need more time. And I'm okay with that. I'm not in a hurry. I am lonely and I do want a partner, but I want a partner who is emotionally sound and has worked through the majority of their traumas. So I would like to get to that point so that I can attract that type of partner, you know? So I'm going to keep working on processing through my traumas and reaching a level of emotional maturity that will attract like-minded men. And then it will happen organically, you know? I definitely have a lot of anger and resentment towards men because of my history that I have to work out, because I'm pretty sure it's obvious that I have those issues. Anyways, I love you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I'm going to go feed myself and have some water, and I hope you will do the same. Catch you next time. Later.